everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com, and what I want to talk about today is sort of the effects of taxation, inflation, regulations. A lot of people just think about a lot of different things, but the bottom line is this: all of these things impose a cost. So if the government gets bigger, spends more money, it's got to tax more to fund that. Now what's going to happen is that if it doesn't tax more, it's going to run deficits, and deficits can oftentimes lead to inflationary pressures. And a lot of times, if the government decides to regulate things, those regulations have a cost in order to comply with them, which increase the costs for individuals, for businesses, for investors, etc. So taxes, inflation, and regulations all lead to a cost on things. Now, we all have benefits or money that we make. We either make wages from our work, we have profits from our business, and we have returns on our investments. Now the thing is, taxes, inflation, regulation can erode all those things. And if you see that the money you're making from whatever your source of income is, whether it's wages, profits, or returns on your investment, you're going to respond to that. You're not going to sit there and just say, oh, well, I'm just making less. Woe is me. You're actually going to try to adjust your behavior in order to respond to that. So if we're talking about work, you may decide to say, hey, I'm going to work more hours, or which means there's less hours at that job for somebody else to work. So now there's a shortage of actual demand for labor for everybody. That could also mean you take a second job, which means you're spending more time away from home, more time away from your family. And if we're talking about running a business, and now your business profits have been hurt because you have to spend more money in taxes, spend more money to comply with regulations, and inflation is eating away at the purchasing power of your profits, well, you have to make up for that. You could do that by reducing the amount of labor you demand so you can hire people less. If you can't do that because, well, you need the people you have, well, then you're going to find other ways to cut costs, whether it's by cutting the quality of your product and or even reducing the return to investors. So if you're a company that pays out dividends, you may pay out less dividends to your investors, who oftentimes, a lot of those people who receive dividends could be stock that's held in a mutual fund, and that mutual fund is what funds someone's retirement. So you end up hurting retirees. Now, 3, if you're an investor, so let's say you were normally okay with a 4% return, okay, a moderate return, but then what happens is that taxes take away, let's say, 20% of your return, okay, so basically 20% of your return would be 0.8% of that 4%, so you really only are netting 3.2% after taxes, and let's say inflation's running at 1%, so then technically that 3.2% return really only buys you 2.2% worth of stuff. Well, you're gonna have to make up for that, and one way to make up for that is to, well, take on riskier investments that yield you more than 4%, so that way after the taxes, after the inflation, you still make 4%. So you may have to take a 6%, 7% return. But the bottom line is, if you're familiar with investments, you're familiar with the idea that investments that generally give you a higher potential return generally also mean a higher potential level of risk. And there's sound economic reasons for why that's the case. So the bottom line is, if you're hurting investors' returns through inflation, taxation, and regulation, the result is they're gonna move their money to riskier investments, so that way they can have a higher return, so that way they still have enough of a return after taxes, inflation, and regulation. Problem is, there are actual real decent investments that only yield 3 or 4%, and they're not going to be able to raise capital anymore because after taxes, regulation, and inflation, people aren't making enough money. So safe investments that could be employing people, that could be providing useful resources to the economy, won't be able to raise capital. And then there'll be sort of a imbalance between risky investments and safe investments that could put the entire economy at risk and really erode the capital structure of the entire economy. Bottom line is that there's a huge macro trade-off to taxation, regulation, and inflation. It's not to say that every rule is bad, that there should be no taxation. That's a different discussion. But the bottom line is, when you do increase taxes, when you do increase inflation, when you do increase regulation, there is a cost. And we need to be cognizant of that cost, because we don't want to just always be pulling those levers and pushing people to make decisions that are not necessarily the ideal ones. Whether it is basically all the things we outlined in this video. My name is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com. If you enjoyed this video, please share it, like my Facebook page, follow me on Twitter, and let's keep talking, let's keep educating. I've also started a new Facebook page called Think Plus Plus, where we're going to talk more about issues where instead of me kind of giving you my perspective on things, I'm going to bring up issues, kind of give you sort of multiple sides of the issue, and allow you guys to have a discussion. So go like that page, Think Plus Plus, and have a great day and enjoy.